Love, Philosophical, Theological, Psychological Perspectives. Week 2. Erich Fromm, The Art of Loving. Erich Fromm was born in 1900 and had witnessed 2 world wars in his lifetime. So when he starts doing his psychoanalysis as a trained psychoanalyst and also a philosopher, he's really aware of how human structures can collapse and become forces of violence, collective violence. And he's getting to the source of that in his book, The Art of Loving. A small book with a lot of rich content to explore. He begins by asking, how many truly people have you known? Truly loving people have you known? Perhaps not many. I mean, we all know a lot of nice people and good people, but truly loving people. For Fromm, this is the fruit of the cultivation of a personality that includes true humility, courage, faith, and discipline. It includes other things as well, but these he highlights and as something we can look for. We're looking for those outstanding people, those rare people that are truly capable of loving, so that we can learn from them. Is love an art? Well, he thinks it is. Now notice that would be different from saying, is love a science? Asking that question forces it more to the arena of knowledge, whereas to say it's an art, it's going to take a certain amount of skill and creative use of intelligence. I love this quote, "Without love, humanity could not exist for a day." It is the lovers that are keeping this world together. It is the basic goodness of humanity. And he explores some misinterpretations or some overemphases that get in the way of love. Some of these attitudes, he mentions being loved versus being loving. So we're in a context in the post-Victorian era where the focus is on I've got to be loved rather than how should I become a loving person. Then there's finding the right person. We focus on as if there's somebody out there that can complete me. And as we will see as we get into the course, this is a residual of a medieval, of an ideal that stemmed out of the medieval context. And then there's a focus on falling in love and being in love. And of course, the falling in love gets most of the attention with the popular love songs and the feelings that are with that. But the being in love speaks to a lengthier commitment with maybe not as much exalted feelings as falling in love. So as a psychoanalyst, Fromm's basic anthropology is that we human beings have a desire for unity. And love is the answer to the problem of human existence. So what we really crave is love and unity. And so he'll say, love is the active penetration of the other person in which my desire to know is stilled by union. So I marvel at this person. I love this person. My knowledge is stilled by union. I like to say the knowledge, the desire to know the other person gives way to a union, but doesn't necessarily quell the curiosity, because I think, along with Gabriel Marcel, I believe human beings are to some extent a mystery to one another. There are different kinds of unity he talks about: orgiastic unity, you could just have the union of two bodies in the sexual act, but that's just one level of unity, not the fullness of love, the stillness of union that comes from actually connecting with another human being, mind, body, and soul. Uh, Conformity is another way. I mean, think about baseball games or football games and how there's this uniformity in the crowd as they cheer on their team. I guess, I mean, I've always felt quite alienated at those big events, but personally, but you get the sense where conformity is a way of creating unity, but not the deep, substantial unity that we're really craving in the depths of our being. But yet it has a role. Artistic creativity is interesting because the artist has to some extent, become one with the object that they're creating, and then try to express that in a medium. So there is a unity with the object that the artistic creative act can bring forth, so that the line between the artist and the artwork is not that separate. There's a basic dissolution between the two there. Dissolution, a dissolving of subject and object. The bottom line for Fromm is that love is a choice. He says love should be essentially an act of will, of decision. It's not just about the good feelings. We're going to be encountering this theme. You know, it includes loving the people we don't like, that aren't easy to love. Love is an activity, not a passive affect, a feeling. That's not to say feelings aren't involved, but too often in our post-Victorian romantic context with residual courtly love in the Middle Ages, we tend to think of love as a feeling. But it is a decision. It's a fundamental choice. Solitude in love, he says, interestingly enough, paradoxically, the ability to be alone is the condition of the ability to love. The getting a sense of self so that I have a self to give, and that comes about through solitude. And this is important because of boundaries. I mean, in a healthy relationship, there may not people might feel threatened by their loved ones spending time alone. He mentions 4 aspects of the character of giving: care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. And his definition of care, or his explanation of care, could be a good definition of love. Love is the active concern for the life and the growth of that which we love, or those whom we love, you could say. Love is the active concern for the life and the growth. And we'll be building on these definitions as we go through. What does it focus on that's helpful? Is it missing anything? Responsibility, being responsible, not just caring for the immediate concern of the individual, but the long-term concern of the individual. Are we saving for our children's futures? Are we setting RESPs aside for their... That's part of being responsible, if we love our children, and of course if we can afford it. Respect, mutual respect for other people, is an important part of love. And interesting, knowledge. We want to know the other person. We want to learn about them. And he has that quote from the Bible that in the biblical terms, the sexual act was often alluded to in he knew her. So there's this association of knowledge with intimacy as well, physical intimacy in this case. I just illustrate this here that his emphasis on objectivity means that we have to have a theory of knowledge. We have to believe that there can be truth in order to love. Now, I won't go into what kind of philosophical presupposition, but there are a lot of philosophers who claim that we can't know. But for Fromm, objectivity is a part of true loving. And that actually helps me see things correctly so that I can be a better lover if I'm not just reading their minds or misinterpreting situations. So I won't get into my favorite philosopher, Bernard Lonergan, but I think at this point, with respect to objectivity, he's got something to bring here. Now, because we have a desire for unity, if there are blocks in the child's emotional development, that can affect them neurotically, and they can get stuck. So for Fromm, a narcissist is stuck in that emotional is developmental period of a 2 and 3-year-old. I have that quote in the book by a U2 song, "When I was 3, I thought the world revolved around me. I was wrong." Well, he realizes it was wrong, but the narcissist does not. They just continue to live as if the world revolves around them. But underneath that is some kind of feeling of disconnection and deprivation. Mature love, he says, I am loved because I am love, and I need you because I love you. I don't need you because I've got this sense of inadequacy in which you fill. Kinds of love. He goes over these brotherly, sisterly love, or you can say neighborly love. It's broadly defined in his work. Motherly love, the special attachment between a mother and a child. Erotic love. He goes into self-love versus selfishness. I'm not going to go over these. They're laid out in the book. And finally, he gets into religious love or love of God. The bottom line for Fromm is that love is a choice. It's not a feeling. But of course, your feelings are going to play a role in love. It's not to say they have no role at all. It is a commitment. The demise of love in the West, what Fromm calls pseudo-loves. Well, he's critical of capitalism, and he did study Marxism after he broke with Freud. But in whatever you think about capitalism, he's concerned about the effect it has on love to treat people as a commodity. And so there's a commodification that, these dating apps where you can swipe left and swipe right, as if these people meet certain checks in a box. It's like it's like shopping on Amazon or something. But there's also an idolatry that seeps in where you can overly idolize the individual. That can get unhealthy as well, especially with breakups. You get people experiencing stalking and things like that sometimes. There's a sentimentalism that can come in, which has an unrealistic notion of love. Maybe someone escapes into romance novels or something like that. And he raises the question, we think that love is an absence of conflict. Now, certainly, everybody's going to have conflict. Healthy and healthy relationships, they're going to have conflict. That's natural. And if your relationship is perennially conflictual, that could be a sign that it's over. But what he's just saying that there's an assumption here that love has an absence of conflict, and that certainly isn't the case. He also goes into a number of aspects of the practice of love: discipline, patience, concentration, objectivity, humility, courage, faith. An interesting grouping here. And in concentration, he talks about the need to meditate, that stillness, but also it helps one to actively listen to the other person better. Uh, I will just share a couple of quotes in terms of courage. To be loved and to love need courage, the courage to judge certain values as of ultimate concern and to take the jump and stake everything on these values. Basically, it takes courage to love in a world full of fear and negativity. Equally, it takes an act of faith. Now, he doesn't just mean religious faith here, it can mean a basic faith in the goodness of humanity. Emmett Fox has a reflection where he says, you know, if you think about most of the people that you meet in the day, they're pretty good people and we have fairly positive interactions. So there's a basic goodness to people. That's the kind of thing that Fromm is talking about. But also, it involves religious faith because when you see that people fail, they're weak and they make mistakes, sometimes that religious value can be a source of resilience to continue to love and forgive. We'll be talking about forgiveness later in the course. In sum, he says, to practice the art of loving is to practice the basics. Make the basic choice to love. And in ethics, this is called make a fundamental option. Am I going to be a lover in this world? Am I going to return good in the face of evil? Love is an activity. If I love, I am in constant state of active concern with the other person, but not only with him or her, the people I interact with, because I've made this basic choice to love. And that brings me back to that unity, that interconnection. You may recall Thomas Merton's experience at 4th and Walnut in Louisville, where he felt connected. All of a sudden, he felt connected with all the strangers around him. That's the kind of thing Fromm would say is an experience of the fundamental unity of which we all crave.